Hello, everyone. Hello, Ollie.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Marcos. Nice to see you.
Likewise, and happy New Year to
Happy
everyone.
New
Very
Year to you
belatedly, because
indeed.
this will probably come out near February. So,
Yes.
yes, yeah, but it's we're kind of recording this just relatively soon after New Year. Um, anyway, we're carrying on with our series of plants in signs. So, anyone who hasn't seen it, please go back and watch. Our previous videos. We've got one called Space Botany, which is a really good primer for these videos. And then we've also done a previous one on previous three actually on, or two is it so far, planets in Scorpio, Sagittarius and Capricorn. So previous three. So this will be our next one, which is Aquarius. So I'm just going to start. We're going to try and whistle through these today because we, like Sagittarius, we both found this Aquarius quite tricky to
Challenging.
find.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one was a bit of a stumper, but I'll just read, as I have done with the past three, the description of Aquarius from Abu Mashar's The Abbreviation of the Introduction to Astrology. This is the Charles Burnett translation. So he says Aquarius is the house of Saturn. It has three decans. Its first belongs to Venus, the second to Mercury, the third to the Moon. Its nature is hot and moist because it's an air sign, airy, sanguine, and it is masculine, diurnal, and fixed. To it belong tall trees and flowing waters. So that's interesting. That's the water bearer piece, I guess. In human form, again, because Aquarius, the constellation, having
Yeah.
few children, and sometimes it indicates barrenness because it's ruled by Saturn, I guess, and it's weak in voice. To it of the body of man are the two shanks which are below the knees, in other words, the calves and the lower legs. And then he describes some countries in the Middle East which he thinks belong to it. So relatively succinct. I don't think any big surprises there. Perhaps in terms of the botany, maybe just the tall trees and flowing waters is interesting.
Interesting one. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, interesting. Anyway, right. So shall I go first with my
Yeah. Go for it.
slightly
Go for it.
tangential pick? And then we'll do the usual, we'll alternate. Um, I picked first. I can share my screen. All right. So my first pick is the olive tree, Olea europaea. Now, I would put this under the sun as a planet, um, which is that's because it's. You could argue it might be Jupiter, I think, or because it's a food grade, very beneficial plant with multiple uses for people. But I think I would steer it more towards the sun because Jupiter plants tend to be a bit more sort of tasty, and the sun has this, also the fact that it's the oil expressed from it, obviously we eat it, but it's also used literally for lamp oil, it's literally used to burn stuff. So I think it's got mostly a solar signature. And of course, in modern phytotherapy, we use it mostly for cardiovascular problems and for fighting diseases. Both of those seem to me to be solar signatures. So the sun, I think, where I'm going to get a bit controversial is I'd say maybe the sun in Aquarius. And that's purely because I think of the air signs in general traditionally were said to rule the blood. So we might appropriate them to the circulation in general. And certainly Aquarius, because it was opposite to Leo, the sign of the heart, is many medical astrologers think, and I would agree broadly. I don't know what you think about this, Ollie, but I would say it's the sign amongst the air signs which I think of as ruling the general circulation most of
Agreed.
all.
Absolutely agreed. Yeah.
Okay. So, and I just think that I mean, there's not much in the tradition. Like Culpeper has one thing to say about olives in the appendix. He says about olive leaves, um, something like that they're not common here or something. It's literally just one line. But because back in his day they wouldn't have been. But
No. No.
I grow it in
Quite.
my garden. It's relatively easy to get hold of now. I do think there's one of my. I'll give you my logic, and then I'll read a little bit of the research just to hopefully back it up. I think it has a slightly saturnine overlay, the olive, and that's because it has these little small dark fruits, like which are sour. They're often brined and fermented, so they're stored in salted water. And that to me has a slightly saturnine overlay. Now, is it a saturnine plant? No, it's solar. It's much more food grade. It's more beneficial, but it has that saturnine overlay, which makes you think maybe it belongs to us. Also, it's very dry. If you've ever tasted olive leaf tea or tincture, it's
Yeah.
extremely drying, has this sort of astringency to it. Um, yeah, so it has this circulatory effect, which might be an air sign, possibly Aquarius in general, more so than the others. It has this sort of like saturnine overlay. It has this dryness that seems to be saturnine. It seems to be somewhat drying and maybe a little bit binding. But the traditional Western, traditional, really modern phytotherapy uses for this is just from Mills and Bone, which I always want to call Mills and Boone, their classic guide to phytotherapy. For lowering blood pressure, angina, possibly associated with hypertension. So it has this feeling of sort of like coughs, obstinate fever, intermittent fever, diuretic, and then to enhance renal function. So generally improving microcirculation, improving the circulation through the heart, lowering blood pressure, lowering fever. So it has this, and if you look at the research, it seems to be sort of diuretic, olive leaf clinical studies decrease systolic and diastolic blood pressure, glycemia and calcemia from baseline values. On average, total reductions weren't massive, but they were measurable. Marked diuresis. So it has this drying effect, which is kind of saturnine, and it has this lowering overall effect, which I think might be, it's a sort of Saturn overlay to a solar plant. That's how
Yeah.
how
Yeah. Nice. Nice.
yeah, I mean, but again, I mean, just anyone, put your thoughts in the comments, please,
Yes.
folks, with these, because we are going out on a limb here. Also, this is a relatively tall tree, so maybe it has that going for it. Slightly, slightly tendentiously, even more so than the other reasoning. But yeah, that's my plant number one. Ollie.
Okay, I think I possibly only have one plant, but my plant for my contender tonight is horse chestnut, which is Aesculus
Ooh.
hippocastanum.
Okay, let me just find a picture of that because I haven't got that one yet. So, hippo.
And while you're doing that, I shall rattle on a little bit about it. It is certainly a tall tree, so it ticks that box, so that's good. Obviously, it's a post-cool pepper, and most of the other astroherbalists Um, so it doesn't have an official planet. Um, so starting off, I would put this in Aquarius as a lot of its uses, funnily enough, are circulatory, which Marcos has already discussed, why that seems to be quite a good valid um, uh,
Criteria, something.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's specifically it's an anti-edema, which and very much so for the legs and very much the lower leg you get that sort of edema, and also things like varicose veins and spider veins get very often occur in that lower leg as well. Um, Deep vein thrombosis as well, which you'll get in the leg, often the lower part of the leg. Um, Tendinitis. Is it tendinitis? Hang on. No, intermittent claudication. That was another one. Sorry.
Aha. Right. Yes. Yes.
Intermittent claudication, which again affects the leg, and this is a very good thing for it. And and then chronic venous insufficiency, which swelling and pain in the legs. It obviously does other things. It's a general good thing for the circulation, but I was thinking, what planet would I put this in? And you could argue for a Saturn designation. I mean, it's something I've never thought of before, unless
No.
and going back to more signatures, we like Saturn signatures. It's got very very dark conkers. Its seed is very dark, very saturnine color. They come in a spiky outer casing, which then spikes are a Saturnian, Martian Saturnian thing. It's also toxic if you eat the conkers, and that's a very Saturnian thing. That toxicity, definitely not food grade.
Mm.
And so I just looked and I thought, actually, this is an interesting one because it has a lot of effects in the not only the modern areas associated with Aquarius, but the very traditional ones as well as the shanks, as Culpeper puts it. And and so that gives it a very Aquarian signature. And the Saturn is also all about restriction. And sometimes you'll find with Culpeper that he will, in my opinion, I wonder what you think about this, that he'll sometimes put things like, because Saturn is ruling restriction, some things that actually get rid of restriction, he puts the Saturnine because it's curing almost by
Yeah.
sympathy or an antipathy, etc. So
Yes.
anyway, that's my pitch for tonight.
No, I like that, Ollie, and I agree. I think so many of the uses of horse chestnut are directed specifically to that region of the body, more so than literally any other plant I can think
Yep.
of. That's a really good case for it. It is also, I point out, a tall tree, so it
Yep,
fits in
yep.
with that Abu Mashar designation of Aquarius there. Just a secondary thought before we move on, because I mean those things all that you mentioned, the slight toxicity because of the saponins, all of that. Interestingly, another thing for Aquarius, by the way, and I'm liking this more and more. Um, you know, this is something in the sort of like crunchy hippie alternative community, but people make washing up liquid from this,
Right.
from the conkers, because they're so high in saponins.
Yes, yes.
There's been videos going on Facebook, whatever. So, Aquarius is the water bearer. It's
Yep.
about
Love it.
it's so high in saponins you can literally use it for washing your clothes. So I really like this. What plant? I mean, sorry, what planet rather would you put in? Because obviously we've done this a bit back to front. We've sort of gone, okay, this is probably an Aquarius plant because of its
Well,
high
again,
degree of specificity.
for
But
all those reasons, I would go for Saturn, I think, because of the
oh,
signatures that we've
really?
mentioned, and because it is all about getting rid of restriction, and Saturn rules restriction. I mean, you could argue for a Jupiterian one, but I wouldn't
Yeah,
again because of the lack of food grade. And it's something like,
yeah,
for
it's not.
instance,
Yes, yeah, yeah. No, sorry. Carry on, Ollie. I'm interrupting.
for instance, Vulgare is
Yes.
ruled by Saturn, but actually most of its things are all about releasing stuff. But it's a Saturn. I know. I always think because it uses the power of Saturn to undo all those knots.
Yes, yes. No, I see what you say. It's sometimes difficult. So the way I look at this is sort of what's the fundamental quality of Saturn? So, if a plant of Saturn has to be Saturnine in its aspect, in its properties and actions, and in its behaviors. And I think for me, polypody, because it's a fern that sort of grows in the little dark
Right.
cleft
Yeah.
trees, and it always tastes a bit like dirty licorice to me. It's sweet, but it has that sort of
Yeah.
muddy.
No, no,
But
absolutely.
you know what I
Yes.
mean? It's
Yeah.
those I love. As you know, I love polypody. It's one of my favorite medicinals. I think it's fabulous. But I think I might lean towards Jupiter here, because I agree that you can totally, Culpeper can logic things out. It helps this by sympathy or by antipathy.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I have a feeling it might help, because what we're looking at here is it's helping from a traditional point of view. From a modern point of view, obviously it's helping the venous, the walls of the blood
Yeah.
vessels, reducing inflammation in the blood vessel walls and helping repair. But from a traditional point of view, it's helping the blood. So I think this is a Jupiter planet, with a secondary Aquarius
Yeah.
overcoat.
Okay. Okay.
But I mean, all of this is highly subjective and has no definitive thing in the tradition. So
No.
again, folks, please put your thoughts in the
Yeah.
comments below.
Love to hear from you.
Yes, we would, because it always generates interesting discussions. And likewise, if you have any questions, it's always useful to see those, because it gives us ideas about what we can talk about.
Marcus, do you have a last one?
Yes, I do, and this is extreme. This is even more out on a limb than my previous one. Which was olive. So we've had olive and we've had horse chestnut so far. I'm going to go for butcher's broom, which is Ruscus aculeatus. Now, Culpeper does specify that this is a herb of Mars, and you can see why. It's kind of got the red berries. It's quite spiky. It's prickly, but not in a thorny way. It's just a very rigid plant. but my reasons for assigning it maybe to a secondary place in Aquarius would be that, again, like horse chestnut, it's useful for varicose veins and for strengthening the
Right.
circulation in the lower limbs. Um, it's also got this, it's the rigidity of it. It has this if you've seen the plant growing, Ollie, have you? Where
I have.
yes, where it's sort of just got like a lot of evergreens do, but it's very, very rigid, which I think is a sort of
Yeah.
saturnine quality.
Right.
And
Yes, I like that.
evergreen, it's very hardy through winter, which is what you'd expect for some saturnine plants at least. Um, and I think if you're going to put horse chestnut in there, you might as well put this one in there because they're appropriate. They give a lot of
Why
similar
not?
uses. It's
It-
not. It's not a big tree. It's a little plant, but it does contain a lot of sort of similar saponins. Not structurally the same, but it's got a very similar mechanism of action to horse chestnut actually. So it's used for venous insufficiency, varicose veins, hemorrhoids, varicose ulcers, lymphedema, and deep vein thrombosis. Very much like horse chestnut. But Culpeper said this was a herb of Mars because, according to him, if I can get I've got my entry here ready. He says it's like asparagus. And in fact, in Italy, they eat the young shoots of it, just like asparagus, like just the very first shoots. And it's very nice it is too. But he says somewhat like those of asparagus. They rise up to 1.5 feet high, spread into diverse branches, and then he just gives a description. And he says grows in copses upon heaths and waste grounds, sometimes under or near holly bushes. It shoots forth in spring, a plant of Mars, being of gallant cleansing and opening quality. Decoction of the root made with wine opens obstructions, provokes urine, helps to expel gravel in the stone, strangury in women's courses, yellow jaundice and the headache. With some honey or sugar put thereunto, cleanses the breast of phlegm and the chest of clammy humours. So he's really emphasizing the Mars part here, the driving away of phlegm and the heating of the body and the dispersing excess moisture in
Yes.
general, basically. Decoction of the root drank, or a poultice made of the berries and leaves applied, are effectual in knitting and consolidating broken bones or parts out of joint. And I thought that was interesting. That's not a use we normally think of for rust.
No, no, it's not, is
And
it?
he's said it's a primary herb of Mars, which I can go with, but that might be a secondary Saturn signature
Saturn,
as
like in
well.
Aquarius again. Yeah, no, I like it.
Yeah, yeah.
I've never
So
used it, but I've seen it, never used it. So I shall definitely, definitely a bit of exploring. Maybe I'll plant some and have a look, see what.
yeah, that'd be. I mean, like, it's something I've used once or twice, only in tincture, often in capsules, actually. When I want a sort of more aggressive horse chestnut,
Right.
basically, I sort of want something that's got a bit more of a diuretic
Yes.
activity as well. So yeah.
Brilliant.
But no, you don't have any extra ones, Ollie. You're
I'm
content.
afraid not. The Aquarius was like even more difficult, but I was quite happy with horse chestnut though, so I shall.
No, I think that's it. I really like that one actually. I think it fits in terms of its action, its appearance, in terms of it being, the tall tree at least,
Poultry,
and
exactly.
and
Yes.
and its secondary uses, which I
Yeah.
hadn't thought about before. I think that's kind of
I
hilarious that
love that. I love that.
literally a person washing stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, you did mention last time. I think it was in the video we did previously on the winter signs. We did one video where we looked at Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces all in the same episode.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned go to cola in that one as a possible
A
Aquarius.
possible. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it was one of those ones I looked at. It's like. Ugh.
Yeah, same time. And in that episode, I mentioned, I think, Erythroxylum coca or coca leaves as a possible
Yes. I
Aquarius
remember.
herb. So
Yes.
so go and find that, guys. I'll put a little link for the YouTube people as well. But yeah, so we have thought there are other possibilities. But if any of you guys have any
I
ideas
would love
about
to
some
hear from
plants
you.
that
Yeah.
we would. Anyway, thanks, Ollie. A bit of a
Thank you.
a fast one this time. We'll be doing a next episode. We might do an interview or something a little bit different. So we'll be continuing with this series of plants in signs until we've rinsed the zodiac. But we'll be doing some bits interspersed as well. So anyway,
Okay. Till next time,
thanks,
Michael.
Ollie.
Lovely. Bye
Thanks.
bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.